Okay, so I came across this video a few weeks ago. I've just now been able to get around to it, to doing a reaction to it. Um, Riffs Africa, How Not to Write a Supplement. I will give the person's uh, channel out there just to give him credit for where credit is due. Most of this seems to be not really a full understanding of the rules of the lore written and some misplaced ideas. So I'm just going to play it and pause it to react to it from where I need to see it.
Hello everyone, this is Campbell, aka SJ Thunder Warrior, and we are going to take a look at a book today. And this is a book that I've had for a long time, and it's actually a book that is both, well, I'm going to say it's a great book. It's a great book, but not for great reasons.
No.
And I'm talking about Riffs Africa. Okay, so here we are, Riffs Africa. I'm just going to go through this. I made some notes, and I'm just going to share with you my notes, looking at this and reflecting upon it about a good, 20 years down the line, and just kind of realizing, A, how poorly written this was, even for its own time, and B, kind of just how much denial I was in the process. So let's get started and open this thing up. Okay, so we have the usual warning, violence and supernatural, and then there's some words about Africa, where Kevin Simbita goes and says how big and massive and complex Africa is. And at first that made me think, yes, not everybody is the same. Not all Africans are the same. This was really cool. And then I got a little bit concerned where he said, really important research was done by Marianne Zambita, his wife, and all of the photographs that she took. And I'm like, okay. But then they did.
His research went a little deeper than that. But what is being left out is there's a whole list of books that was also looked at, and it also stated that that like a small fraction of all this research actually went into the book itself. It seems just like everything else. If you'll read Pantheons of the Megaverse, where they go into various different lores from around the world, mythos from around the world. A lot of it is just a springboard. Basically, they use names and locations from various pantheons, such as the Norse and the Sumerians and the Greek. And that's basically what they went with African lore. Is they used it as a springboard, but they fictionalized it like so much is done. If you'll take the popular Marvel Cinematic Universe, or just Marvel in general, where they use Thor, well, they have Thor and Loki as brothers. Loki's an adopted brother. That isn't the case. In the actual mythos, Loki is Thor's godfather. Loki tricked Odin into becoming blood brothers, which made Loki a god, which in turn made Thor his godson. So, but Marvel, just like Palladium Books, they took the core of the mythos and fictionalized it for what they needed.
They have a really great list of resources, which actually weren't all that bad for the time. But despite all these complexities that he talks about and all these resources, when we get into it, you're going to see that none of that really shows up. So let's take a look. All right, table of contents. I'm just looking over this and I'm like, okay, letters from Aaron Tarn. Aaron Tarn is kind of the narrator of the Rifts universe, kind of like the historian and explorer that tells about different places. So that doesn't seem too bad. Oh, then it goes right into the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Okay. All right. Okay, we have Gods of the Nile, Gods of Darkness, Gods of Light. I may be mistaken, but the Pantheon didn't really work like that. Got Nixie, Ramen. Okay, the work of Africa, the witch villain. Okay, that's a little interesting. Okay, they have OCCs, of course. Okay, let's see. Alright, Rifts Africa, North Africa. Wow, we're starting to talk about the actual place at page 109 out of a 160-page book. So think about that for a second. Not actually talking about the actual geography of a place until page 108, 160-page book. Okay, let's flip down. Oh, Pygmy Hunter. Pygmies? Wait a minute. Pygmy Hunter, Pygmy Shaman as RCC. Okay, so if you don't know, RCC stands for Racial Character Class, and it's usually been reserved for characters that are literally like not human, like dragons, because you can't play a dragon in this.
That's incorrect. That goes to what I said at the beginning. The lore of the game, the actual idea, it's a step above the race that it started out as, whether human or DB or whatever race it is, or whatever species it is, however you want to put that. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay, this is really problematic. Alright, and then here's where, so this is like actually not terrible as an introduction, but what kind of happens after, it just kind of goes downhill from here. So these are the letters from Aaron Tarn, and all this describes things that are going on in the beginning, this like gathering of heroes, but throughout this whole section, there's just a huge Crusader vibes. And even though they say that they are in North Africa, after coming from England and going through Europe, there's no mention of...
Well, yeah, it would be a big Crusader vibe, because you have people from all over the world meeting in Africa, heading towards Africa and the Middle East to deal with a major threat. So, yeah, there is a bit of a Crusader vibe, but again, that's more of a historical debate than it is a gaming debate. But no, as Aaron Tarn is known as a interdimensional traveler, so these are her letters, so why would there be Africans directly in there just yet? These are letters to people she knows back in North America. How she got there, her first impressions, what's going on, and things like that. So the fact that Africans aren't mentioned directly in the letter, it's not a big surprise. It's not that big of a deal.
Any there's no Africans yet. It's like they have talked about people coming from all over Europe, and I think even like people from North America, like the Knights of Camelot were there. And all of these, like, ancient Chenku dragons that have been on Earth and hiding forever are coming for this great gathering. But still, no one from Africa is in this. And this goes on for a bit. Okay, and then, so you might think, we're gonna go on and now we're gonna talk about Africa now, right? No, we got these guys. The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So 25 pages, 4 monsters, and their mounts, and these guys just have ridiculously huge stat blocks, which is okay, but guess what? There's no story. There's no reason for them being. There's no real logic. What are their motivations? What are their activities? Why are they all in Africa?
What is their motivation? Well, if you actually read the stat blocks, if you actually read the fluff on them, their motivation is to destroy life indiscriminately. I mean, everything from a dung beetle to an ancient 1,000-year-old dragon. Destroy life. That is their purpose. That is their motivation. Nothing but to destroy. Why Africa? Why not? Most everything has been about the Americas, North, Central, and South, and they've had some of the China and Japan, Russia, and Europe, and so why not? The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse is mentioned in the Bible, is mentioned. Don't quote me, but the Quran, a lot of the Middle Eastern and African, Northern African area is where the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse are mentioned in the End of Days, so seems like a logical choice to me, but that's just me using logic.
Not in like Atlantis or Mystic China or anything like that, just really shoehorned in. There's no real point to any of this. And so death is pretty interesting, a little bit interesting.
Why would they show up in China? As far as I know, China doesn't mention the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Now, if you want like an End of Days kind of theme taking place in China or centered around China, I would suggest Big Trouble Little China. That's a very good one, and that would give you an idea if you wanted to base it in China. But the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse wouldn't fit there in China. So why would you put them in China? Not necessarily shoehorned in there in Africa, but see, it should have been a separate book.
Won't kill you. He can't kill you unless you attack him first. That kind of stuff. I mean, the artwork is great. I just kind of feel like, to be honest, if I was Kevin Long, I'd be kind of a little annoyed that my ideas, my work, were just kind of shoved in here and not given a really full story.
See, I agree.
And I'm just thinking okay, cool. Whatever. It's Rift. There's always these huge stat block things, but then there's also some pictures like this, and I'm thinking, when I saw this, I was like, oh great, cool. So this is the SAMAS power armor, or the SAM power armor that they have in the coalition states, which is in where the United States are right now. But in the lore of the world, these were actually kind of copies or imitations of armor that the military used before the rifts happened. So when I see this, I'm thinking, oh great, so maybe there's an African nation.
That would be the NEMA, the Northern Eagle Military Alliance, a coalition of Canada, U.S., and Mexico, kind of an Interpol of North America. And so yeah, that's where the Glitter Boys come from, the SAMAS and all the power armor that the coalition states use comes from that. Really wouldn't make sense to have any in Africa. Maybe an outpost. Yeah, see, he's showing Wakanda here, like, well, Africa isn't known for its great industrial technology. A couple hundred years in the future, yeah, okay, maybe I could see something, but no, as it is even now, it's not a technologically advanced. There is no Wakanda in Africa. It's just not there. It doesn't really make sense. Wouldn't make sense then. Doesn't really make sense now.
That kind of like how the coalition states was retrofitting technology. Maybe there's some nation states in Africa that are going to be building up stuff soon, and we'll have like cities and we'll have like fortress cities and things like that, and power armor and some new robots and stuff like that. That will be really, really freaking awesome, right? Because humans made this. Okay, spoiler alert. That does not happen at all.
We'll make it happen.
So, and I just want to note that by now we're about, 23 pages in, no Africans, 27 pages in, still no black folks, people of color, no dwarf, okay, cool. We got a nice pastoral view there, okay. Okay. Alright, so even in the artwork and the concept stuff here, nice, I'm presuming this is an interpretation of Mahat, probably by Kevin Long. It kind of seems like his style. And the here. Okay, alright, Gods of the Nile. So let's get into this. And what do we have here? Okay. Alright. It's their own take of things. I think I need to drink some tea. This section on the gods is just bad and really overtly simplistic. They divided up the Egyptian gods into gods of light and gods of darkness, which I don't think was an actual. Here we have.
In the actual mythos, probably not. Even in Norse mythology, there really wasn't gods of light, gods of dark. But that's what Palladium needed. Gods of light, gods of dark. So they fictionalized what they say, this one seems to be, Odin. He would seem like a god of light. Loki, he seems like it's like always flip-flopping, causing trouble. Hell, she would be a goddess of the dark, since she's the goddess of the underworld, and she's the one that's going to unleash the souls in Helheim, and she's going to lead the armies against the gods of Asgard. Okay, it makes sense. You'd have gods of light, gods of dark. Same thing with the gods of the Niles. You need good guys and you need bad guys. It's the way things work. You got gods of light, gods of dark. Good guys, bad guys.
Set, real name, Set Typhon Tanis. I didn't think that was right back when I was a kid, and now since it's like back in like 1993, I didn't feel that this was right, and now in 2020, I could find no correlation of this particular name, because Typhon, that's the son of Gaia and Tartarus. So Anubis. Oh, yes. Okay.
It's a name, Typhon. All right. The Greeks and have been going into the northern part of Africa since probably the dawn of time. It was an homage to the Greek influence on the Egyptian way of life, because they had it. It was there. Another book I'm planning on getting but don't have, but Wormwood. They use a lot of different names, but they don't use it for the people that made it famous. And the same thing here. It's a name that they used that sounded cool.
Great. So I could spend my time talking about how they completely kind of made Anubis anything that deals with, like, dying or passing on to the other side, and this pantheon being depicted as like completely evil and really ahistorical. But I'm going to skip that, because now on page 41 of this 180, did I say? Whatever. In page 41 of this book, we see our first Africans, and we have an undead person in the front. Okay. And our first living Africans are actually way in the background here. Not really having any like agency or tools behind this also surprised white guy, but who's in this like safari getup, which again this doesn't really match the world of Rifts. Two, it's just
true. It really doesn't. That doesn't really seem to fit. But once again, you have to know how Palladium works. They try to pinch every penny they can. One of the ways they do that is they reuse pictures. This is probably a picture from a different book from somewhere, probably Australia maybe. I don't know. For all we know, that's an Aborigine. That was first intended as an Aborigine, not an African. That's the way it works. They have the picture that they use for an assassin. They also use in a Nightbane book, and actually, I think they use them in a couple different Nightbane books, and I think I've seen them in one other book. They just, instead of spending money on creating another picture, they have this picture on stock that they reuse. For those of you old enough who remember the old Flintstone cartoons, y'all remember where they're walking through the house and they're walking for 5 minutes and they, door, potted plant, chair, door, potted plant, chair, door, potted plant. And they're reusing to save money from having to draw a background for each scene that they're in. They just keep reusing the same 3 scenes over and over again to show that they're walking. That's what Palladium Book is doing. It's probably just a picture that they had on stock.
Kind of like reinforcing the stereotype of like African porters, or like that they're just following the directions of the white guy right here, who's presumably in charge because he has the gun and he's up front, and they're just standing around being shocked. Now, granted, standing around looking shocked when an undead creature comes out of the ground, okay, yeah, that's reasonable. But there's just too much all at once, especially for this being the first picture of any African in this whole book. Sure, you can have your own positions on material, but on the source material and your own interpretations, but at least don't suck so bad at writing about it. I mean, it's just really horrible. Like, for example, Best the Depraved. Okay, so Best didn't actually work like this. I'll actually link to an article. Excuse me. Best the Depraved, which is depicted as this person right here. Didn't act like they're depicting in this at all. Okay, so here it says, Best the Depraved is a disciple of evil and often associates with Set. He is hideous, bearded dwarf with a crown of feathers. Best delights in torture and cannibalism. This is sad indeed, for at one time Best fought alongside Ra and the gods of light, until he gave into his darker, more savage emotions. Okay, darker, more savage emotions. Really? Followed by insanity. He was recruited by Set and joined the pantheon of the gods of darkness. As such, he is usually associated with Set and his pantheons, but best associates with all manner of dark forces. Once a symbol of love, gaiety, and feasting, Best now symbolizes murder, gluttony, and cannibalism. Like, that is like... You can't 180 something like that without giving us more than just said, like, oh, he gave into his darker urges. Come on.
Why not?
This whole thing is just lazy as fuck. Okay, alright. So now that we've gotten the, dark heavy, the, gods of darkness and evil out,
had to save on space, so they just clipped it to its bare minimum, and it came out kind of... But, I mean, yeah, we've seen it all before. It's a great champion of good, for whatever reason, went to the dark side. It's a common element in a lot of storylines. That one was just really cut way down to the minimum. Again, it goes back. It could have been the way it should have been done. Is that the Four Horsemen should have been done as a separate book or a series of books, much what they did with the Coalition War with Tolkien, and done that separately, and then done an entire book. Would have made more room for Africa. So yes, they could have added more in there.
I'm gonna sip my tea. Now I got the pantheons and God of light. Pantheons of Ra, god of... Hold on, wait a minute. There needs to be like a colon or a comma or something there, but okay. Holy whitewashing, Batman. So this is the pantheon. This is Isis. I'm not sure who that is. That's Thoth. That's Ra. And it just really just kind of goes downhill from here. I mean, they didn't even try. So like Isis, the All-Mother and Warrior, is described as a magnificent silver-haired beauty with cow-like horns, and great feathered wings. Okay.
What's wrong with that?
Doesn't really talk about. Okay. Alright. Alright. And then we have Minion of the Gods, Phoenix. Just mind you, page 63, it's been 20 pages, there's no visual representation. We haven't even talked about, like, African people or even, like, the geography yet. And we're just getting thrown, like these inhabitants and these creatures and no places to put them. This is really, really bad. And now we have...
And it's like, Palladium, this book is very picture light. And by what I mean by that is they're not having a lot of pictures. There's only so much space. That's why they have to count each word. They have to make sure everything is spaced right where they can fit as much detail in there as they possibly can. So they cut on the pictures. All right. Honestly, in my opinion, you don't need a lot of pictures of Africans in a book of Africa. What you need are the pictures of things that you don't normally think of. Things of, like alien monsters and DBs and all that, things that aren't there today, things that you won't see in the real world. That's what you need the pictures of. You go to Africa, you're going to see Africans. Fact of life. But, so, to me, you don't need a lot of pictures of Africans. You don't need African tribesmen. You do need the pictures of gods and goddesses and DBs and mutated monsters and whatever else is flying around there.
The jinn, and I think there's like no mention of the Arabic or Muslim influence in the story and mythology around the jinn in this either, which is really, really interesting. And now we're like, okay. Alright. So, this is... Okay, so when they talk about, like, African magic and how different African groups view the supernatural, this is it. They don't do, like, compare and contrast. They don't say, this is believed among this people, or this belief is more common in South Africa, Southern Africa, or West.
How many tribes are there in Africa alone? There is not enough. Even if that's all there was in this book, was the different tribes and what they believe, there is not enough room in the book for that. You have to paint it with broad strokes. Generalize.
In Africa, nope, it's just these broad strokes. Even though
that's what you need.
The author says, Africa's a big, complex place. Not showing it. Alright, so, let's see, more scenery. So the African witch is just a undeniably evil, villainous character.
Yes, the witch in general is in the world of in the Palladium system. A witch is something akin to a witch has made a deal with the devil, effectively. That's what they use. If you look at the witch in the Palladium fantasy book, they went with the Hollywood hype version, a witch being someone who made a deal with a powerful being to be granted powers beyond what they already have. So, yes, witches are, in the Palladium system, witches are portrayed as evil because they've made a deal with the devil. Deal with the devil.
So we get our first, fully drawn black human on page 74, and it's an evil witch, or at least being associated with an evil witch. This is just crazy. Oh yeah, and Sandy and Phobia's table. Alright. And then we have the Medicine Man OCC, which is basically like a witch hunter, and not really like a very good or particularly potent one at that. The mechanics are all out of whack, but I'm not even, I'm kind of like I'm trying to like pull myself back to like take a bigger look at this here. And so like, in this, it's like witch, woman, evil. Medicine Man is a guy, and he's good. So it's like yay patriarchy all through here.
Really. That's where you chose to go with that.
Enough of that. But this is actually like the first work of art in this book that to me just looks kind of cool. So they get really kind of like specific, like pulling in like some things like, the Balubale over here, Mayembe horn of divining over here, and pulling things from all different cultures, but, you just said that Africa is a huge place, and it is. So tell us where these things come from, or maybe show us several different examples, like 2 examples from different parts of the continent, from different groups that do similar things. You can do that. It's not that hard. Oh God, yeah. This guy. Okay, this guy is in at least 2 or 3 other books. This is like their standard, like, hey, let's get a dude with a somewhat flat top showing up in it. Yeah. Okay, so, and this whole thing on, like, ceremonial magic.
What was that group? Boys to Men? I don't know, there was a famous guy who had this, like, big old 7-foot tall flat top fruit thing. I don't know what it was called. I want to say Boys to Men. I'm not too sure.
Secrets. On one hand, I did appreciate that at least they got the idea of, like, communal magic and, like, people working together to pull off, like, big magical effect, but at the same time, still overly general, one size fits all magic, tells a single story, forget it. And it's not even that, like, that great. It's actually a lot of it is really just sad. Okay, and then what the hell is this doing in here? Okay, so the Mind Bleeder RCC just popped up, and they had this whole big paragraph. Mind you, we still haven't learned about any, like, specific, like, groups or nations or city-states that are in Africa right now. But they had this, 2-3 block bulk on what the new German Republic has been doing. And I'm like, why just put that in tracks in the NGR book? It was the one that was right before this one. Come on, guys. Okay, so there's all, like, Mind Bleeder Psionics. And now we have, the Necromancer. Okay, so at least considering the bigger story that they're trying to tell with, like, the Phoenix Empire, this somewhat makes sense to here because there's a lot of necromancy going on in the Phoenix Empire, but at the same time, like, they didn't even talk about, like, why you might want to let a player character be a necromancer. And then this dude, like, maybe they studied necromancy to protect their village. Maybe they're trying to have a change of heart. But no, they're just like, okay, necromancy.
It's called a backstory. It's a backstory. You come up with a character concept, and one of them is a backstory. That's for you, the player, to decide, not the game. Why you would want to, I don't know. Maybe your grandma died and she was the last family member you had, so you studied necromancer to bring her back. Maybe you flunked out of med school. Maybe necromancy was why you flunked out of med school. That's called a backstory. You, the player, come up with why. If you read, oh man, necromancer, I could be a necromancer, that sounds cool. Alright. Come up with, why your character became a necromancer. That's for you to decide. If you look at him, necromancy's overdone, I'm not that into it. Okay. Pick something else. But that's for you, the player, to decide, not for the game developer. Now you're just nitpicking, you're just trying to find things wrong.
This is evil, here's how to play it, and here's all the magic for it. Okay. Alright. So, now we are, after this, necromancy stuff, we get to finally, alright, Rifts in Africa. Highlights. Whew. I need to sip some tea now, because we just went through 109 pages of Africa without Africans. Let's get down to it. Well, crap. Okay, so this just continues the kind of narration, rather the false narrative that Africans are fine dealing. like, magic and monsters and things like that, people just stay in their villages and they don't do anything. They don't try and make anything. They don't try and, there's no talk about building, rebuilding empires or nations. And here, okay, so there's just this list of African nations that one existed and many have survived the coming of the rifts, and it's basically like an alphabetical list from the Akamba to the Zulu, and like the names are cool. Thank you for copy and pasting, but it doesn't say where they're from. Doesn't say like which ones existed or not. Like if I didn't know anything, I could think like Zulus were over on like the Somali coast or something like that. But no, we don't.
No, because
they have. There's.
It gives a general. It gives a general location. It doesn't give specifics, much like the American Indian tribes in North America. There, it doesn't give specific locations as to where they're at, but it gives, it's like, okay, this group over in this area, in this general broad area. I think broad strokes, because they don't have enough space to create, or they don't have enough space to put down specifically between this latitude, longitude, all this stuff. They just don't have that space, so they give broad strokes, leave it for the players, the game master to fill it in.
Pygmalion, we'll get into that in a moment. But the problem with stuff like this is that it tells that single story of Africa. It just says, it paints things with a really wide brush. Like no one would say that the French and the German are the same. No one would say that the Spanish and the Spaniards and Nordic folk are the same, and paint them with the same brush that they're doing with this. Okay.
Because we know that the are from Spain. The Nordic folk are from Norwegian. So we know that, okay, so although it doesn't specifically state this group is here, this group is, the Norwegians are in Norway, and the Spanish are in Spain, and the Germans are in Germany, and we know these things, okay? So now, but it's slightly different whenever it comes to tribes, okay? We don't know specifically in what nations, maybe, but look it up. Find out for yourself. If it's that important to the story that you, the game master, are trying to tell with the players, look it up. Find out for yourself. If you're trying to, just like if you were trying to run a game in the New West setting, and you needed to know where specifically the Apache tribe is located, you'd have to look it up. It doesn't say specifically where. It doesn't specifically say what tribe is where. Okay, you got to do some of the work yourself. There's just not enough space in all these books to put every detail. People have already done that. There are countless and countless of books that tell you what tribe is where in what part of the world. You can find out the different Aborigine tribes in Australia, where those tribes are generally located. If it's that important to your setting, to your adventure campaign, whatever it is you're running, if it's that important, do the work. That's your job as the GM, is to take these broad strokes and add the fine detail to yourself. Because if they add too much detail to the book, to the game book itself, you're not reading a game book, you're reading a novel. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not the intent of the books. These books aren't intended to be novels. These books are intended to be game books where you create your own game.
Alright, so actually, yeah. So here's a pre-riffs map and a post-riffs map, which is cool. But yeah, okay, so for languages, they're talking about Northern Africa, right? Specifically everything from about Yay up. And it says 85% speak Euro, 80% Gobli, 65% Dragonese, 30% Spanish, 20% Fairy. Why is Arabic not even mentioned in this? It's anything remotely relating to Islam or the spread of Islam just isn't here. And 85% of North Africans after an apocalypse speaking Euro, which is their kind of amalgamation of European languages, that just does not make sense at all. And oh yeah, again, when this talk to Laura,
go anywhere in the world. Go anywhere in the world, and you will find somebody that speaks English. Not to mention, it's been 300 years. A lot of the languages are going to be drastically different. Who knows? Maybe the Arabic languages is actually an offshoot of some alien language. It's just, once again, there are so many different language. There are so many different things. You can't expect to have everything. I don't know. Come up with a reason. If it's that important, you come up with a reason. Most people, it doesn't matter. It's not that important. Most people don't even use the language skills. Seriously, think about it. Most of the language skills, okay, I speak it. There you go. As long as you have a ranking, as long as you have the skill at first level, you have conversational ability in that language. Most people don't even roll to see if they understand or can comprehend what the conversation is, because most of it is daily conversation. Language is not that big of an issue in any role-playing game, unless you're going from the US to Japan and your character doesn't have the Japanese skill. Then it becomes an issue. Then, you have to make some rolls or, find an interpreter or something like that. But for the most part, it's a useless skill on the sheet. It really is. I've often wondered, why even waste a slot for it? Because you hardly ever roll for it. Language isn't that big of a skill in game mechanic terms. It just really isn't. I have not seen anybody. The most I've seen is, okay, does anybody speak Goblet? Oh, nope, nobody? Okay, well, he says something. It sounds like it's speaking Goblet. And that's it. Now, using technical terms, like say you're trying to, you have a mechanic that speaks Goblet, and he's trying to explain to you, but you don't have a mechanic skill or anything, so you don't know. He's trying to explain to you. Yeah, then you'd make some rolls to find out what he's trying to understand what your mechanic is saying, because he's speaking a language that isn't your primary language, and he's using technical jargon. So all that's kind of in here, and so yeah. But other than that, language is pretty much useless.
Or Africa. First off, I don't think anyone even uses that term, Lower Africa. They might say Sub-Saharan Africa. but not like Lower Africa. And just so it's clear, they say everything below the Sudan, Chad, and Niger will fall under the heading of Lower Africa. And again, for languages, 90% speaking Swahili. Okay. 75% speaking American English. Like, both those things just don't. 60% Euro. Like, virtually all humans in the lower and southern portions of Africa speak Swahili, the old trading language, and 75% speak American from the pre-Rif days of English colonialism and American tourism. That is just some stank laziness. Take a look at this picture that I actually dug up just to see where people speak Swahili today as like one of their major languages.
Okay, that is today's term. This map that he's got right here, that's today. That's modern day. Okay, the golden age of man is we're in Rif's timeline. We're at the beginning of the golden age. We've got about 100 years, and we got about 100 years of the golden age of man before the Rifts even show up. After that, we've got 300 years of dark ages. So this blue map that he's showing right here, if this is where Swahili's spoken, that is gone. It's gone. All right, I can tell you that because 100 years, because there's a lot of technological differences. A lot of nations, there's just this whole vast timeline of what goes on, and so this is irrelevant. And again, I'll point back to what I said about language skill in RPGs. It's just useless.
True, like many people do, but virtually everyone, 90% south of Chad? No. Unless, now, if they were to say, if in this description they actually talked about, like, human cities, that would be great. Or, like, human trading culture.
Well, here's the thing. Human cities, even in North America, even in the USA, or even in North America, human cities, actual cities, what we think of as cities, are very few and far between. Very few. You've got Chi-Town, you've got Tolkien, which is wiped out. You've got Laszlo, New Laszlo, and you've got the coalition states in Canada, and you've got Lone Star, the Lone Star facility. That's it. As far as cities go, is what now, where you'd walk in and say, "Oh, this is a city." That's pretty much it. Everything else, wilderness. You got a few small towns here and there where a doctor, if there's a doctor in the village, he would have electricity. Maybe the mayor, he would have electricity, and that's it. Nobody else has electricity. We're talking about 1700s type of living. So it's just so in Africa, it's where much of it is third world living now in modern times. It's going to go way back. There's not going to be a lot of cities, if any. Mostly in the northern region. Where it'd have contact with Europe and the Middle East, maybe. But there's just not going to be a lot of technological advances in the lower portion of Africa.
as if they said, like, okay, there was this inland trading empire boom that brought Swahili to all these other places during the Great Cataclysm, then I would be like, oh, you know what? That makes sense. That's great. But the way that they present it, it's like there's both nothing going on and these really broad brushes being struck. And this, like, 75% speak American from the pre-riff days of American tourism, this makes my head hurt so much. Oh, hell, man. Okay, so of course we get to how they so eloquently put it as the jungle people or the pygmy RCC. Now, wait, I have to do this. In the Palladium system, there are OCCs, which is like your class, and there's also some things that are people that don't have an OCC, they have an RCC, or like a racial character class. That would be for things like dragons and werewolves and vampires, you know, the things that are like kind of fundamentally like their own little thing. Okay.
This is from, I'm going to read something around here, and this is from the core rulebook, the Psy Stalker, which is listed as an RCC, a racial character class. You see it right up there. The Psy Stalker is a mutant whose psychic sensitive powers enable him to sense other psychics, psychic energy, and magic. The character can be human, or a DB, or a mutoid. Can be human? I'll give you, the racial character class is probably not the best way to have put it, but it's not saying it's not human. It's what it's saying is something more than human. It's not just dragons and werewolves and other things. RCCs are also are characters who are so powerful that they don't need an OCC class. That their abilities set them apart from other humans or other humanoids or DBs or mutoids. Basically, think of it like Marvel. At a certain point, you know, it's like they come up with all these ways of how these people came up with or got their superpowers, and then they just said, well, okay, instead of constantly coming up with why this person got this ability and this person got this ability, why don't we just say they were born with it? Were created. And they're not the mutants. The mutants aren't they're still human. The mutants are still human. They're just a next step up from humans. And that's what the RCC is. They're still the core race of what they are, human or DB or whatever. They're still that at the core. They're just a step up. So just because they have the title of RCC doesn't mean they're not human. It just means that there's something extra than.
Okay. First off, the term pygmy is just problematic as hell. They don't call themselves that. They've never called themselves that. So if you have people like the Twa or the Aka or the Mbuti who are just phenotypically shorter, smaller people, you know, they are still human beings.
Yes, so I'm saying they're not.
Okay.
Where does
they should not be a separate RCC.
But they have abilities that
period.
Set them up.
What the hell is wrong with these people? And how did I not burn this book when I was reading this when I was 12 years old?
Maybe because you were smarter?
So they do talk about Lalibela, the stone churches in Ethiopia that were carved into the ground, but again, they really take kind of like African agency out of that again, and now they say that might be like a gateway to Wormwood underneath it, but again, nothing about the people that are currently there now. I will say one thing. I do appreciate that this had the Great Rift Valley. I was in a geography contest,
Okay, well, I'm going to stop it here because now it just goes into the he just goes into the general geography of the area and things that you would need to if you were running a game in Risk or running the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse game.